You know, I don't really interact with shelves all that much anymore. I can't think of the last time I've gone to a GameStop to purchase a game right up off the shelves like I would here with True Crime New York City without having done dissertation level research beforehand. I mean, $40 is a lot of money. $50 is even more money, $10 more, if I'm not mistaken. I guess the closest analog to the store shelf is the eShop listings on the Nintendo Switch, or console equivalent for me. There I can go, spend about $10, pick up something, and play it for a night, 2 nights, 3 nights even, 4 nights, if I'm feeling really adventurous. The time-honored tradition of picking up a game box because it's got a guy pointing a gun on it has translated to me dropping $10 on a game like Bloodstained, Curse of the Moon because it looked kinda cool and cost only $10 on the Nintendo Switch eShop. Gee, we almost made it through that entire sentence there. On the Nintendo... Let's just put the text on the screen. Time onset expectational dissonance is the term I've created to describe the feeling that changes between a game's Kickstarter campaign and its eventual release. The big-time Kickstarter model flips the traditional hype cycle upon its head. Normally a game's hype and momentum build over time. With each trailer comes more momentum, more excitement up until the eventual climax of the game's release. It's a little bit similar to the old inverted check mark that you might see in your narrative writing class. I drew a diagram, actually, on this. Kickstarter forces all of the excitement to happen right at the beginning of this cycle, which then decreases as time goes on and you hear less, and then has to increase again with trailers and momentum until eventually that climax isn't quite as high because we spent so much time so long ago discussing a game that was only a thought in the mind, was only an idealized version of that game, and then the eventual trailers can never really truly add up to the game you kind of crowdfunded because that game is put in place with the idea that it's going to be the ideal version of the game that gets made, and that so rarely, if ever, happens that the game that you want to be making, because I think at the end of the day, anybody who's making a video game wants it to be as perfect as it can be, and that's just not really feasible. That's just not really pragmatic in the long term over a 4-year developmental cycle. As I continue moving my hand here to simulate the passage of time, I guess I could point to the watch, but my point is there's kind of a dead space between the game's crowdfunding and the game's release, and that hype needs to be bolstered somewhere, and that's where Bloodstained, Curse of the Moon comes in. Advergame is typically used as a pejorative, which is a connotation that's been earned, not necessarily a connotation that's unfair for the most part. There's a time-honored tradition of very bad advert games, especially dating back, especially these free ones that kind of started with the Xbox Live Arcade, with Yaris, that game where you play as the Toyota Yaris. You can't even get that game anymore. There's the Sneak Kings, the Big Bumpin', the Pocket Bike Racer that you could buy for like $3 at a Burger King and play on your Xbox 360 back in, what was that, 2006? These games have a tendency and a reputation to be bad. Oh Christ! You remember those Doritos games from like 2012? It was like a Ninja Warrior game, but it wasn't that. It was like a Doritos themed, or maybe it was a Taco Bell theme. It was like an Americanized Mexican food game. Oh God. A far cry from the, Cool Spot was at least playable and enjoyable. Like, that was a fun game, and the difference between those advert games and this advert game is that the McDonald's game is advertising McDonald's, and this Bloodstained game is advertising another Bloodstained game that's going to be coming out feasibly further down the line here near the end of 2018, if you believe the projected release date on Wikipedia, which I do. Bloodstained, Curse of the Moon acts as a sort of advertisement for Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which is scheduled to come out later this year. I already said that. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night was kickstarted in May of 2015, and Curse of the Moon, which I'm just going to refer to as Curse for the rest of the video so I don't trip over my words. If I have fewer words, I can trip over fewer of them. That's kind of my writing scripts philosophy here. Even I wrote it down in pen on a notebook here because I was worried that if I have it on a screen in front of me, I'll read it off the screen and not look at the camera with like deadly pinpoint eye contact accuracy. What was I saying? Ritual of the Moon was kickstarted in May of 2015, and I haven't thought about it since then, which is a little bit over 3 years, which is why it's valuable to have a game like Curse of the Moon come out, because it's done its job, and I've actually thought about Ritual of the Moon for the first time in... Did I say Curse of the Moon? Ritual of the Moon. I've actually thought about Ritual of the Moon for the first time probably since its crowdfunding, which is valuable. Oftentimes, after a crowdfunding campaign, all of the news that comes out, we tend to look at it in the negative sense. If you remember that, was it Yog Ventures that got crowdfunded, and then every bit of news that came out after the crowdfunding was, here's a snag in development, here's some wasted money, and here's the game getting canceled. Mighty Number 9 had that. It was a very promising Kickstarter, and then you went dormant, and you had like some, like, oh, the game's coming along, it's coming along, and then delay, and then the game that came out was mediocre, and people didn't particularly care for it. Now, I'll say that there's a difference between that sort of Kickstarter game and the more independent Kickstarter games like FTL and Night in the Woods, and I'm struggling to think of other ones. There have been many a good Kickstarter game. It's just that the high-level ones that tend to get all of the media attention tend to keep some of that media attention with them, again, as I do this thing with my hands. And over time, that media attention tends to turn negative and tends to not look really in-depth at the positive aspects of it, because ultimately the main goal is to get a game out. And again, that time onset expectational disorder kind of hurts your perception of the game in general, because all of that excitement that would be naturally building up over time has been already spent about a year and a half ago, or in this case, 3 years ago. I just said 3 years and I had to think about it. That's absolutely pathetic, Joe. My point I'm trying to make, though, as I fumble over my words once again, well, more than just kind of fumbling over my thought. I didn't even turn the damn light on. I had the whole light... That's much better. Wow, and I'm not going to refilm that. That's all. That's gold. That's key. That's staying there. My point is, if Curse of the Moon came out to remind me that Ritual of the Night is coming out, it's done a fine job, because now I'm thinking of it. And Curse of the Moon isn't half bad. Ritual is intended to be a game adapting an idea, adapting a concept. The Metroidvania concept, one that's been well documented in history. The Metroidvania is a level... mechanic... wait. Ritual is a game intending to adapt a concept, the Metroidvania side-scrolling game with leveling mechanics, which was innovative in 1996, but has 22 years later been iterated upon past the point of novelty into the mindset of a 2018 market. Simply making another Symphony of the Night for 2018 would be fine and a good game, but there's been so many improvements in the Metroidvania genre. I think the hope for this game is that the innovation that shined through in 1997 will also be what shines through in 2018. Keep that core concept, but also keep innovating. Of course, recreating the essence of an old game can work just as well, provided the product is accurate. Curse manages to do just that, and Curse is effectively just a game for the NES plucked right out of 1988 with a few positive improvements thrown in there. For one, this game does, with 5 buttons, what could have feasibly done with an NES controller. There's an extra button used for item usage, which would have been accomplished with the up and B button combination, and changing between characters, which I guess would have been done in the start menu, was done with the lovely little shoulder buttons provided to us by the Switch controller. The added convenience, I think, makes up for the anachronism in which they exist. This game is also open to those not looking for an accurately torturous difficulty experience. There's a casual difficulty setting, which is pretty much exactly the same game, except with 2 key but still pretty minor changes. Instead of 2 lives and being forced to go back to the game's beginning after a game over, after you lose those 2 lives, you have infinite lives in Curse of the Moon's casual mode, and you also don't get pushed back whenever you're hit by enemies. Both of these things make the game significantly easier, but don't make the game any less enjoyable or challenging. I mean, it's really incredible. Games like this have a fine line to walk between accuracy and accessibility, and they did it perfectly. This doesn't change the game that they've made, it's just made it best for both camps. I mean, I'm in awe of it. I really think that's admirable, and so well done on their part there. This mechanic kind of shifts Curse into a perfect little zone between recreation and adaptation. It's a game that works perfectly in 1988 and 2018. If Ritual finds its way between these 2 spaces and holds up the standard of excellence set by Curse, then we've got something promising on our hands. In fact, we've got something promising to fly right off these very shelves. And I put the True Crime box back on the shelf already, because I did that take earlier and forgot to bring it back. So that's the video right there. That's the end of the video.